Afternoon office creepy feelings. I'm a skeptic first, believer second. Opinions are welcome, however, please keep them as opinions or ideas. I am open to all ideas, however, I hope that by anyone choosing to comment on this story, that you respect me as well as my opinions and or ideas. Now, to get to the important part, which is to do more with the feelings I get, rather than what I've seen or heard. I work in a small office building, 2 minutes away from the city, and I've been working as a receptionist for about 6 to 8 months now. It's a lovely job and close to many fast food outlets, pubs, clubs, restaurants, and other entertainment places to hang out and enjoy yourself. Now, in searching for any history to this building, I've not been able to find much about. The only thing I've got from the history of the building that apparently it used to be a brothel many years ago. Those who do not know what a brothel is and are over 18, please Google, and it's an embarrassing to say. Anyways, part of my job includes collecting the mail, and then opening the office and getting everything sorted for the day. So I get in around 8:15 a.m., and I am alone until about 9 to 9:30 a.m. For the hour that I am alone, I feel totally at ease and calm. However, packing up at the end of the day is another story, and even sometimes when I'm alone during the middle of the day, it's a bit uneasy. Twice, I've seen something move from the corner of my eye, which has startled me. Now this I've brushed off as my imagination, or my eyes playing tricks on me. The first time I was in the kitchen waiting for the kettle to heat up, and was staring out the window, when to my right, I noticed something like a human crouch down, or a big cat or dog-like creature dash behind the half-open door to the toilet. My first instinct was to stand still, but then I talked myself into thinking, It was just my eyes, playing tricks on me, so I quickly closed the door anyways and hurried back to my desk at the other end of the office building. The second time was just earlier today, when I was working at my desk. Now, I should probably mention that there are 2 doors, one to my right, which is constantly locked and blocked by my reception desk, which is L-shaped, with a short edge of my right and long edge in front of me, making a little area for reception, and the other door is also to my right, but in front of my desk, which is where people enter and exit from, and is where a walkway and hallway starts. Behind me is an office blocked from me by a wall. The door is behind me on this wall, but more to the left, and on the opposite side across the walkway and hallway from our reception area is another office, exactly the same as the one behind me. Now, this office door is normally open, only ajar. Most of the time I can see a bit inside. So, as I was explaining, I was working at my desk, and from the corner of my eye, I saw a tall gray thing disappear further into the office. It's a bit unnerving. However, I'm going to stick with it either being my eyes or my imagination. We had someone come out to fix the cracks and holes in the floorboards the other day, in which he said, we're probably 150 years old, so there could be a lot of history here. I'm sure there could have possibly been something that's happened here, especially if it's being a brothel, if that was true. And I would have no doubt that such a busy area, with so much alcohol supplying places, something bad, really bad, could have happened. And possibly there may be something still residing in this building. But until I have solid proof, then I'm going to continue about my time, thinking this place is just old and it's just my imagination. Mystery Girl. I'm not sure if this story classifies as paranormal, but would like to still mention it. I was 10 years old at the time. My mom's eldest sister was married to a village guy in another state. They lived in an ancestral home with a huge land surrounding the house. They had about 100 coconut trees, 3 jackfruit trees, about 20 mango trees, and some areca nut trees. They used to sell the produce from these trees to supplement their livelihood. The house was more than 50 years old. We used to visit them once in a year in May, summer vacation in India. My aunt's family consisted of herself, husband, mother-in-law, an elderly daughter 18 years old, and younger son 16. We needed 20 hours travel by bus in the 1990s India to get to her home, and used to reach in early morning. On one such trip, our bus got delayed, and we reached her home at noon. There's a long, narrow, sandy road that passes in front of her house. There are many houses on either side of the road. The entrance to her home has a narrow stone gate through which only humans can pass, probably made to keep stray animals out. The stone-gated entrance has a small seating area with a coconut tree on one side. As we were nearing her home, we saw a young girl about 10 to 12 years old, combing her hair seated on the area near the entrance. She was wearing a blouse skirt and had waist-length hair. As soon as we came close to the entrance, the girl vanished. My aunt commented that probably my first aunt must have been having other guests. As we were welcomed into their home, my aunt asked about the young girl. Everyone remained silent, and then my aunt changed the subject. The holidays were going great. One noon, while me and my cousins were wandering into their farm, on reaching a certain location not far from the house, we saw some sort of shrine built around a particular tree, and it had some food offerings near it. We assumed it was just some sort of worship place and continued on. Later that night, we heard a man screaming loudly. The screams were coming from the direction of the coconut trees. My uncle rushed out with a torchlight. My uncle caught him and brought him to this lighted space in the front yard. The man, still shaken with fear, was screaming to let go. My uncle let him go. After coming into the house, my father asked about the incident. After a long silence, my aunt explained that probably the man was poor and was trying to steal the coconut tree branches to thatch the roof of his hut before monsoons. The worship place that we had stumbled on earlier was a site for worship of a female form of power that guarded their territory from thieves. Similar stealing incidences had occurred before. Most of the thieves and poor people in the surrounding areas knew about it and never came back to steal again. She said that the female form could be seen sometimes as a young girl sitting near the tree at noontime. She said they didn't tell anyone, especially city dwellers like us, because we would never believe them and make jokes about it. Do you think that such positive powers can exist that can help you guard your stuff if you believe in them and offer them things in return? It's very much possible that most of you will dismiss this as a stupid, impossible thing, or could even make jokes about keeping such powers to safeguard our homes and do away with security cameras, but I and other 6 family members have clearly seen this girl sitting near the tree. The noontime knocking. This is fairly standard, might be a tad cliché, and I'm sure people will come up with a handful of ideas of what this might be, but I'm nearly positive the house I live in is haunted. The house was built in the 50s. The kitchen has not been renovated or anything since then. There's 3 bedrooms, with a bedroom at the end of the hallway in an odd angle. It is not a straight hallway. There's 1 full bath and then a half bath in the basement that was added later on. There's also a bar in the basement and a fireplace area. There's a fireplace upstairs too. The house is technically a single story, but we live on a hill, so our basement is partially ground level, and then our main floor is ground level. We rent the house from my aunt's fiancé after we lost my childhood home to foreclosure. This house is my landlord's childhood home. It is probably important to note that my landlord's mother and father are both deceased. Also, all 4 of my grandparents are deceased. So, with all that said, I'm going to explain the most recent crazy thing that's happened in this house. My bedroom is right next to the living room. It shares a wall, and my bed is against the wall. Every weekday when I am home, there is a knocking on the front door, which is also against the wall my bed is against. This just started to happen in the past 2 weeks. I leave my room and check every door. There's 4 doors to the outside, and I find absolutely no one. And it's always been 12 p.m. and 12:30 p.m. I've been between that time, never at any other times. I'm sitting in the living room today as I type this at 12:38, and there has been no knocking. I'm starting to think someone is trying to catch my attention or my mother's attention. I would like to say that's an animal, if that's a possibility, but how could they, every day, between 12 and 12:30, make a knocking noise in the same spot on the house? I don't think that makes too much sense. Thoughts? Things that go bump in the middle of the afternoon. I was home alone one afternoon with my infant son. My son was about 10 months old at the time. He had fallen asleep in his bouncer downstairs in the living room as he often does. I was upstairs dusting and sweeping the bedrooms. I always keep the door double locked when I'm home alone, even during the daytime. We live in a small town, but we live on the main drag of town, and occasionally have a run of break-ins in our county. A friend of mine had called while I was cleaning, so I was talking to her as I worked upstairs. I heard some noises coming from the kitchen. I was immediately concerned and alerted my friend, whom I was talking to. She told me to quietly walk down, while I had her on the phone and check things out. I was freaked out, because my baby was down there alone. I went downstairs and no one was there. All the doors were still locked, and my baby was still sound asleep. The noises sounded like dishes clanging, and my trash can, which is a heavy metal step can, open and closing. I thought I was just crazy and went back upstairs and continued cleaning. Once again, I heard the mysterious noises and once again went down and checked on my baby, who was still sound asleep. No one was around and no sign of anything being disturbed, so I went back upstairs. I wasn't up there long when I heard my baby screaming at the top of his lungs. I ran down the stairs as fast as I could, and in the living room where he was standing up straight and his bouncer stiffened up and turned towards the door behind him, just freaking out. That is when I noted the door to be unlocked and wide open. I was still on my phone with my friend and could barely even tell her what had just happened. I was totally freaked out. This is just one of the many experiences I've had in my home. I plan to share more later. My home is at least 100 years old. We live in a very historic town with lots of old homes. Afternoon adventures. Because I've been reading a lot from the sites and enjoyed all the different stories, I began to really think about my past to see if something strange had happened before, and I just didn't notice. Sure enough, I found one and still do not know what to make of it. At the time, I was around 10 or 11 years old, during the summer in Texas. I had gone to a friend's house for the day. It was just me, her, and her little sister. We started telling ghost stories to get a good scare, and it worked. So I pretended to see something out the window over their shoulder. I did a good job because they were all scared stiff. The strange thing is, they asked who I was seeing. Then my head got fuzzy, more like my brain went numb. As if I could really feel the spot where my brain was, and that was when it had, gone to sleep. Like your foot or hand when you have cut the blood flow off. Then I started to see a woman with my third eye. At the time, I didn't know what I saw her with. I just had a mental picture of an elderly woman. She had thin gray hair. Her frame was small and slightly slumped over. She had peachy skin and some missing teeth. She had on a red dress and was looking at them. She was smiling. I could tell she loved them. You know, that smile a mom gives her child? Like that look. I said all of this when my brain woke up. I looked at my friend who was crying. I got scared and rushed to hug her. Of course I asked what was wrong, and she told me that I had seen her grandmother, who had died 2 years ago, and was buried in a red dress. I'm still dumbfounded on this one. It passed out of my 11-year-old mind, as so many things did at that age. Anyone have any suggestions as to what might have happened? Thank you and blessed be. The legs. Here's another experience to share with you people. This incident happened with my father and his friends when they were about 19 years old. They were studying college that time. All were students and loved to spend time with each other, talking, laughing, and just having fun. During vacations, 6 of the friends usually used to spend the afternoon time together. There was a room library with barely 200 books on a wooden almirah and a lone wooden chair. There was a carpet spread on the floor. As the room was in a secluded area, my dad and his friends started going there to explore the books and spending the spare time there. Nobody was staying there in that area, especially in the afternoon. One such afternoon, at about 2 p.m., all 6 of them were having lunch at their respective homes, rushed to the library to spend their afternoon time together. All of them reached there and, as usual, started playing carom board. 4 of them were engrossed in playing the game. 2 of them were watching and gossiping simultaneously as well. Now, my father was sitting, facing the wooden chair and the almirah. My father recalls there was a continuous sound of something screeching on the floor, but none of them cared to look around. Being the careless 19-year-olds, they did not think that something so frightening was going to happen with them. While playing the game, suddenly, my father saw 2 legs hanging down from the wooden chair, as if someone was sitting on that chair, with his legs hanging down, as we usually sit. The chair itself has moved from its place, and to everyone's horror, was behind my dad's friend, who was sitting opposite my father. My dad screamed to his friend to look behind. He looked onto his back and immediately lost consciousness due to the shock. What they saw was beyond imagination. There was no sign of an upper body or torso. Only there were 2 legs, hanging down from the chair. All 5 of them were aghast and scared out of their wits. All of them were absolutely shocked. Somehow, they managed to revive their unconscious friend as he slowly gained reconsciousness. They collected their belongings and rushed to the door to get out of that room, but to their horror, what all of them saw was a sight to remember for a lifetime. They saw a translucent outline of a man blocking the door and preventing them from coming outside. All of them were sweating profusely. The eldest one of them gathered some courage and started chanting loudly. Everyone saw him gather some courage too and started chanting the same with trembling but loud voices, holding hands of one another. Slowly all of them came out of the room. After coming out, all of them started running towards their respective homes. Next day again, all of them met at one place, but it was definitely not in the library room, as now everyone was sure that it was haunted to the core. But to find out what was actually in there, all of them decided to go to the person's house who was in charge of the library. They met him, and after hearing everything in detail, all 6 of them got an earful and scolding as well. The one who passed out at the time was suffering from mild fever. After a lot of scolding from the librarian, they came to know that actually the room belonged to a man who spent most of his time sitting on that chair, as there was no one to look after him. When he became very old, people of that area requested him to entrust his room for a library, so students can come there easily and collect some knowledge from the books. But the man was ignorant in giving his room up. After a few months he died, leaving the room unused. As the room was unclaimed, people in that area decided to make use of the room by making it a library. After opening the library, barely a month had gone by. 2 sweepers who slept that night on the either side of the door of the floor had suddenly died in their sleep. Both of them were found dead in the morning, and their post-mortem revealed nothing. Soon after, the librarian also felt uncanny, due to which he stopped going to the library altogether. My father and his friends swear to God they won't go anywhere near that room. The librarian suggested that all of them should go to the temple and seek their blessings and drink some holy water. After the incident, the room was double locked by the librarian, but all of them got the life lesson of not going to any secluded place in their whole lives. Sorry for the mistakes, and thank you. My afternoon dilemma. This is a story to share my experiences at a family friend's home when I was younger. We were all very close, and we lived just a few streets away, so their home was like a second home to us. The family consists of the mom, the daughter, and the son. I, my sister, and brother were bored and decided to visit them as usual. We got there and knocked on the door. We just slip our hands through an opening in the iron gate to open the main door, which is almost always open, and call out to them to come up. We do this because they sleep a lot. It's crazy how a whole family can sleep like that. So that afternoon, we went there as usual and the gate was locked. I called out to the daughter, "We'll call Jane," and got no response. Immediately, I assumed she was sleeping. I called the boy. We'll call John the same thing. I decided to call Jane on the phone, and I heard the phone ring vaguely, so I was so sure she was sleeping, and John was, probably too. I then had an idea to check the main door, if it was open, and it was. I opened it, but still couldn't go in because the iron door was in my way, but at least I could see halfway inside the house, and called out to them at the top of my lungs, hoping they would wake out of their damn slumber. Still, I got no response. I was about to give up when I distinctly saw what looked like John in all black walking from the kitchen to the room. I just saw the side view, and he was walking so strangely, but all I could really think was how much I wanted to punch him for making me shout and scream when he was in the house all along. I was about to scream at him to get back when I saw my friend and her brother walk up to us from outside, smiling with grocery bags in their hands. Needless to say, I was dumbfounded and shocked. I asked them if anyone else was home, and they said no. I told them what I saw, and how I was so sure it was a man or a boy. We all got in and checked the house, thinking it was probably a break-in. There were no signs of forced entry anywhere, and even if we missed something, there were no open latch windows. He would have to break windows to get in and out. I've always been a sensitive, but at the time I was too confused to think of it as paranormal. I was so sure of what I saw and tried to give rational explanations, but nothing fit. I later found out they too have been experiencing strange occurrences, but I'm just glad I didn't try to punch whatever it was. Ive Seen Death. I don't have a photo to post with this, but I've been wanting to share this story to a forum for a long time. When I was around 13 years old, I had the most haunting experience of my life. I've told friends about this story plenty of times, but no one has had a similar experience. I had a rough childhood, and one of the things I had to do was dig in my basement. The goal was to eventually make it a finished basement. It started out as a crawl space. It was to the point where we had about half of it dug out. My house had about a 10 to 15 feet slope from the road, with a set of stairs going down to a flat wooden walkway. Across the front of my house, I had 2 steps going up to the door. We had a big shed in the backyard where we stored the digging equipment. It was a very beautiful day. The sun was out, and there was almost no clouds in the sky. It was around noontime. I walked outside into the shed in the backyard. I grabbed a pick and shovel and make my way towards the front. I step onto the second step of my front door and catch something out of the corner of my eye. I turn and look up towards the road, where there are my parents, 2 parked cars in front of them. I see this figure, tall and cloaked in black clothing, holding a sip. It had a hood and the face was just pitch black. It grabs his cloak, whips it in front of itself, accompanied by a large gust of wind, and disappeared. It wasn't even windy that day. This all happened in seconds. I threw the tools and ran inside. My mom was on the couch, and my first thought was, it's my stepdad, because he liked to scare me like that. But I realized he was in the bathroom. I don't know how he would have been able to pull up disappearing anyways, but that was my thought. I got chills and watery eyes whenever I think about it. The fact that I saw this clear as day in the middle of the day. I'm not haunted by it, but it's just such a crazy childhood experience that I'll never forget. So my question is, has anyone experienced something similar? The Girl in the Fields. Hi all. When I came across this subreddit, I thought I'd share a story with you. Pardon my English, it's not my main language. I come from a small village in the east of Poland. My home and several surrounding homes is surrounded by a forest and fields with various kinds of grain growing. I work and live in Krakow nowadays, and come home maybe every other month. Last summer, I took a long leave and came home right in the beginning of harvest season. The bus I took from Krakow doesn't stop in my home village, so I had to take a half-hour walk to home, because nobody could pick me up. Nothing unusual, same old path through fields I always liked to take. The sun was shining, the wheat was around waist-high, not yet cut and collected. It was very hot that day. Nobody was around for almost all the way. when suddenly a girl of golden hair and in a white dress crossed the path from one field to another, around 20 meters before me. I was surprised because I didn't see her earlier, and certainly I didn't recall anyone looking like her living nearby. And what was she doing in the fields during this time of day? Probably her Instagram photo shoot. Not thinking much, I kept walking home. When I had some time with my parents, I asked them if there were some new neighbors that I didn't know of. There weren't, so maybe she was just someone's guest. In the evening, I took my dogs for a walk around the village and through the fields as well. I liked that path, and well, if there was a slight chance of meeting her, why not? She looked pretty and I'm single, what the hell? Of course we didn't meet her. What was I thinking? A few days passed, and my sister was coming home by the same bus I did. I decided to go and pick her up, so it's early noon, and I'm walking through the fields again. And then I see the golden-haired girl. She's sitting by a tree in the middle of one of the fields. I got a better look at her right there. Wow. She was pretty. Long golden hair, white dress, a wreath on head. I think she was reading something. I decided to come by and say hi. She saw me and smiled as I began to walk her way. I began to feel uneasy, don't know why. She picked a nice place to sit and read. I too like sitting somewhere remote where no one would bother me, and that tree gave a nice cover from the sun's heat. Then my phone rang. It was my sister, who got off the bus and phoned me to ask if she should wait for me. I said that I'm on my way, and when I hit my phone, the girl wasn't there. I talked to my sister about all of that. She's home more often, but also didn't know any new girl who lived there. A few more days passed, and I meet my friend's uncle. He asked me if I brought a new girlfriend home, because he's seen a nice girl near our home. We joked about that only we two met her and went our way. By now, you're probably thinking why I'm posting it here. About a week later, said uncle went to work on the fields around the noontime and went missing, only to be found dead by that tree a day later. The doctor said it was a heat stroke, and he must have fell because he was bruised. What one have in common with the other, you ask? A very old lady lives there. She is widely known to be very nice and talkative. We'll just call her Grandma. She's 99 currently, and there will be a big party for her when she's 100 years old. She was raised in a different world, however, a world strongly grounded in folklore. When she heard that my friend's uncle died in the fields around the noon, and that we have met that golden-haired girl, she got scared. Really, really scared. She forbid me to go to these fields. She forbid me to try to find the girl, she said. The girl has to be Apollonika. For those who are not familiar with it, Apollonika is a Slavic demon that is often portrayed as a young girl in a white dress, or an old ugly woman with copper teeth, what do you know, that shows up during the noon on the fields, and then lures men, killing them afterward. I'm not saying that the girl killed my friend's uncle. I'm not saying that I met a demon. I'm just saying that it got me creeped out, and I'm thinking if there is some truth in folklore. I'm wondering if I need a witcher to take care of some monsters around my hometown. Weird stuff happening at my house after a vacation this past week. My mom and I traveled out of state for a couple days. We got a trusted family friend to stay over and pet and house sit. But once we got home, weird shit started going on. It's happening right now still. My mom and I have lived in this house for 20 plus years and nothing like this has happened until now. We have 3 dogs. All of them wear these little LED light buttons on their collars, so they are visible on night walks. The first odd thing was that I came home from work and noticed one of the dogs' light was on. This was really odd, because you have to have thumbs to turn these lights on, and there was no way a dog could have done it by rolling around. I turned it off, but the next day a different dog's light was on without me or my mom doing it. Second thing that happened is that my mom left the house early yesterday morning and put one dog outside so it wouldn't pee in the house. I was sleeping upstairs through all of this, but when she got home the dog was back inside. No one had been at our house to open the door and to do this. The third and most disturbing thing happened last night. I woke up at noon while my mom was doing laundry in the room that is next to mine. She asked, "Why were you up at 5 this morning?" I told her I wasn't awake, because I'd gone to bed at 1 a.m., slept like a log, and asked her what she was talking about. She said that at 5 a.m., when she was leaving her house to go work out, she saw my room vividly lit up from outside. I was confused as fuck at this point, and asked if she had turned the light off since it was off when I woke up at noon. She said no, it was off when she got back. Then, when I got out of bed, I saw that my dog's and cat's water bowl from my bathroom had been moved, probably 20 feet, to be just in front of my bed. My mom said she had not moved the bowl. I am 100% sure I did not wake up to go to the bathroom, and I also do not sleepwalk. There is always someone there. I have been talking to a relative, and they have encouraged me to try to recall and tell my experiences with the entities or spirits behind the veil of our everyday life. They may not at all come in a chronological order, but here we go. There has always been something about me that attracts spirits. I can't explain how or why, and I know that some people don't believe it, but I know I do. Between now and October, some other things have been happening. Little things, but nonetheless, things I noticed. Others might be quick to brush it off and forget, but not me. When Halloween came, we bought candy for the trick-or-treaters, and even though it is new here, I live in Sweden, we were ready and still received a good amount of kids who came by. There was a bowl of candy left over, and the next day as I looked at it, I noticed that some had gone missing. I asked my husband, who said no, that he had not touched it. My kids are too young to have gained access to it. Aside from that, they don't have the time and are not quite enough to sneak candy in stealth. Trust me on this. This was not the first time this has happened, and I gave a nod and said whomever had taken it was welcome to more. About a week later, my kids had used their toothpaste and opened a new one. I was excited, because Star Wars has been a big thing lately in our house, and I bought a toothpaste with a stormtrooper on it, and I was excited to hear about their reactions. I was in a hurry, getting ready, and I looked on the sink and saw no toothpaste. I looked with the toothbrushes, but still, nothing. I knew they had opened it, because I saw the old in the trash and asked my husband about it, to which he informed me that the boys were very happy, and they had in fact opened it. We went on with our day, which was busy, and around noon we started laundry. All the laundry and baskets were downstairs and in another building, with all of the clothes. As the day wore on, we folded laundry and did more laundry, and soon it was time for the kids to go into the shower. We were nearing the end, and I no longer needed the 2 baskets that go in the bathroom. I took them in and picked up my oldest son's clothing on the floor and put them into the basket. A half hour or so after the showers, when the boys had their bedtime snack, it was time to brush teeth. I was on the computer when I heard a small argument between my husband and the boys. I got out to investigate what the trouble was. As I did, I learned that my husband thought the boys took the toothpaste, but they were denying it. I asked them to return it, and they were adamant about not taking it. I began to believe them, and all 4 of us looked from top to bottom and came up empty-handed. I must have searched the bathroom 3 times very carefully, moving stuff and picking stuff up. Looking behind things, I don't think I could have missed it. That is when it hit me. Our resident ghost must have taken it. Now, I know that sounds silly, but if you only knew what goes on here, it wouldn't be so hard to believe. So I asked my husband, "Do we have another one?" To which his reply was no. That was the last one, and I sighed. So I knew I had to ask. I asked her, the ghost I believe is a woman. When I post more about my experiences, you'll see why, to give it back. I said, "Haha, okay, you've had your fun. You took some candy and you're welcome to it. Now, I don't think you need to brush your teeth, or if it was a joke, I need it back now. It belongs to my boys. I feel like I have to check the bathroom 1 more time." As I do, I look under the tub. Nope, nada, zip. Then, I get this urge to look into the laundry baskets. I honestly don't think I will find anything, but here goes nothing. Remember, the baskets had been gone all day. I never saw the boys' toothpaste that morning, and the baskets were empty when I brought them in, except for the boys' clothes I put in a shower time. But what do I find? The toothpaste. just lightly hidden under a shirt. Not long after this, my younger son came home and showed me a pretty crystal-cut bead he found at school. He dropped it, and I heard it tack, tack, tack on the floor. I searched all for it. It's not a big space at all, but it shouldn't have been hard to find. But it seemed to have disappeared. I got onto my hands and knees, feeling all over the floor, the steps, the welcome mat. I moved out the shoe rack and emptied all the shoes a few times and ran my hands inside. No bead. I told her to go ahead and keep it if she liked it. I told her that she was taking it from a small child, and that wasn't nice. If she wanted, she could take something from me instead. No luck. The next day, I told my husband what was happening, and that it never showed up. Then the very next morning, my oldest was getting ready for school downstairs and found it on the welcome mat. Last week Thursday was Thanksgiving, not a holiday celebrated from where we live, but I managed to find a nice turkey and cooked a great meal for my family and our friends, but on Friday instead. The next day, Saturday, we have our family movie night. We bought our boys PZ and we were eating it on the couch. After a while my youngest son requested his last PZ, well, the movie got paused and everyone got up and shook our blankets, pulled our couch cushions. I ended up on the floor looking under the couch, and under the space rug, nothing. We said we were sorry, and that he was okay with that, so we continued with the movie. I got to refill my drink, and as I did, I asked her to please give it back, reminding her she's taking it from friggin' kids. I made a deal with her that if she gave back the PEZ, I would give her a chocolate bar, but then said, we baked this beautiful chocolate cake with chocolate caramel toppings. It's phenomenal, and better than any PZ any day of the week. If you give it back to me, I'll cut you a piece of a cake. Not even 10 minutes later, back in the living room, my oldest son moves back into the couch to get more comfortable when I get the weird look on his face. He moves his blanket, and there is the missing PEZ. I ask him, did you know you had his PEZ, or did you just find it there? Again, remember we shook out the blankets and everyone moved and got up? He replied with, no, I just moved and felt something weird on the blanket, and I found his PEZ. I know because I ate the lemon, and should have a green and red left. I have 2 green and a red, and he is missing his green one. I said thank you to her and cut her a slice of cake. This latest activity I do believe to be my grandma. She was spunky in life and had a sweet tooth. I can only really guess, and I say her because I do have another story about a girl I met in my house. I'll write more later. Also, I'm not exactly sure how to tag this, as it is in the rules. Maybe someone can tell me? Thank you. Mystery caller. It was one afternoon, and I'm preparing to go to school. I was combing my hair when the phone rings. Hello? The usual greetings when someone calls you through the phone. It was my friend. She was waiting for me in front of our school's gate. I was about to go outside when an unregistered number called me. When I answered it, I didn't hear anything. Then I again said hello, and then a soft voice of a lady says, hello. And I got annoyed because it imitates the way I said hello. Then I asked her who she is, but I didn't get a reply. I look at the phone thinking it got cut, but seconds are still running. So I put back the phone in my ear, and again, she said hello to confirm if she's still there. She again imitates me, but this time saying hello several times, as if it's trying to make me mad, but in some way, it's kind of freaked me out, since her voice was soft and it feels like the voice became louder every time she says hello. The call was cut automatically. I went outside to go to her school, since my friend is waiting for me, but while walking, I tried to call the number several times, but the operator says that the number is not in use. Then my mom called me later that day and informed me that my dad's aunt passed away that afternoon. I told her what happened to me that afternoon, and she thought that maybe it's my dad's aunt. We were not that close, but whenever she was visiting us in our house, she would always bring gifts for me, and she always says that she's proud of me. Not to brag or anything, but I seem to be the apple of the eye of my father's relatives, and it gives me goosebumps and teary-eyed every time I think of it now. Even now, while I'm telling the story, I got goosebumps and I felt the urge to cry.